Another day, another article documenting the oppression of the women's. Will it ever end? Ageing women in financial strife, the new face of Australian homelessness. The new face. What about the old face? Who was the old face? Were articles written about the old faces? What happened to the old faces? Did they find their way out of homelessness? Or did they just get pushed to the background because the new faces have vaginas attached to them? Oh, and just a heads up, this article will not address any of those questions. Rising divorce rates, skyrocketing rents, and the gender pay gap have combined to create a new homeless epidemic in which women in their 50s and 60s are the victims. So one paragraph in, and you can already see the problems with this piece, and unfortunately, it doesn't get any better. It's badly written, it uses cherry-picked data points to push a biased view of homelessness, which is fine if you're interested in perpetuating the myth of women's oppression, but if you're interested in an objective analysis of the problem of homelessness, then give this article a miss. You won't be getting any of that. So rising divorce rates. Well, who initiates the majority of divorces? Let's see. About 70% of divorces are initiated by women. Skyrocketing rents, well, outside of certain areas of major capital cities, not really. And of course the gender pay gap, which doesn't exist when you control for a range of factors that boil down to basic life choices men and women make. So fail. Social workers warn Australia is facing a generational tsunami of this older demographic in coming years as a lack of super, casual jobs and high-priced housing take their toll. Well, they would say that, wouldn't they? Social workers have an interest in keeping themselves employed. And super for non-Australians is a retirement scheme that has matching contributions. But in Australia, it's compulsory. So the reason older women have less super is because they work less, or they work lower paying jobs, or part-time jobs for most of their lives. Not only that, if you're a 60-year-old woman, chances are you had no super 40 years ago. Only 32% of the workforce in 1974 had superannuation coverage, and most were men, because surprise, surprise, most workers were men. It wasn't until 1991 that the superannuation guarantee was introduced that covered 80% of employees. Also, the super guarantee was initially only 3%, whereas today it's 9.5%. So obviously someone starting full-time work today and works consistently through their adult life will be in a much better position than people in their 50s and 60s. So all those students bitching and whinging about paying more to go to university should remember that if they hold down full-time employment for the majority of their adulthood, they'll end up financially much better off than their parents and grandparents, all things being equal. Now, on principle, I'm not in favour of forced saving. It's your money after all. You should be allowed to do with it what you like. But if you don't have it, there is a certain class of financially inept individuals that'll just end up being a strain on the pension system. But let's not turn this into a discussion about superannuation. Charities are reporting increases of up to 44% in the number of older women seeking homelessness services in the past 5 years, and government stats are showing 500,000 women will fall into housing stress over the next 2 decades. Well, what about the number of men that will have housing stress in the coming years? Oh, I forgot. Men don't have problems, and if they do, it's the fault of the patriarchy. Move along, sir. Those same organisations say the increasing number of older women arriving at Sydney's homeless shelters have led traditional lives, been housewives or work part-time, but with the death of a partner or divorce, are shocked and bewildered to find themselves virtually on the streets. The only shocking and bewildering thing here is that you're shocked and bewildered at your financial situation. Were you not paying attention? Apparently women usually control the household budget, but I guess when you're human doing, that's husband for the uninitiated, stops bringing home the bacon, you learn that money doesn't just fall out of the sky. Well, welcome to reality, ladies. And if you initiated a divorce from a guy that had no assets, but he's the breadwinner, what'd you expect? Did you not think through the consequences of your actions? Oh, that's right. You're a female. You're not responsible for your actions. Just blame the patriarchy or something else male. The Australian Institute of Health and Welfare reports the number of homeless older women seeking help has risen 44% since the collection began in 2011-12. Close to 10,000 older women accessed these services in the past financial year. A St Vincent de Paul Society spokeswoman says women over 55 are the fastest growing group of people experiencing homelessness. Women in Australia are experiencing homelessness at rates more than double those of women in the UK. Now that's an interesting comparison, isn't it? I wonder why they chose to compare Australian women to women in the UK. Could it be that if you compared them to, say, I don't know, Australian men, maybe it wouldn't appear that bad? 59% of Australians seeking help from homelessness services are women, she said. Well, again, isn't that an interesting way of putting it? 59% of Australians seeking help from homelessness services are women, because we all know that men are less likely to ask for help, which is the fault of patriarchy and therefore their own fault, and so they can be ignored because of vagina. Now let's look at some homelessness statistics, and wouldn't you know it, 56% of the homeless are male, but that's not important because women's is homeless. 25% of the homeless are Indigenous. So that's the real scandal in a country where Indigenous people make up 3% of the population, but are 25% of the homeless. But no, it's all about the women's. Years ago, more women retired with a house, Ms. Ryan says, but that's become less common, forcing them into expensive rental markets where the average rental for a one-bedroom apartment outside the Sydney CBD is now $447 a week. And why is that, Ms. Ryan? Could it be that more of them stayed married than do today? And why do they insist on paying such high rents? Perhaps because they don't want to adjust their lifestyles to new circumstances? Could that be it? The shocking aspect of this new face of poverty is that most of the women involved have not experienced long-term serious illness and have worked most of their lives, often in good, middle-level jobs, she said. Well, if that's true, then they must be financially inept. If you worked a good job for most of your life and have nothing to show for it, whose fault's that? Obviously not yours if you possess a vagina. So this article just goes on and on with the sob story and never addresses how women get themselves into this situation or that men find themselves in this situation more often. But there is some good advice toward the end. Women who may be thinking about divorce should seek advice before they even mention the word to their partner. It's very important for women to have a plan before they leave on a number of fronts, for their safety, but also legally and financially. Well, that's good advice for anyone contemplating divorce, man or woman. But this entire article can be boiled down to the final sentence. Homelessness has risen among older women, so it has to be addressed, which is the equivalent of because vagina. More women are becoming homeless, so now homelessness is a problem. And of course, we don't need to understand the life choices made by women that got themselves into this situation, because that would be victim blaming or holding people accountable for their actions. Something has to be done because a woman has suffered. Now, lest you think I'm some cold-hearted asshole, I don't dismiss homelessness as a non-problem. I'm very much in favour of looking after our own at home rather than spending billions on foreign aid. As long as we spend that money on creating opportunities, i.e. jobs and training for people to acquire skills to lift themselves out of poverty and make them self-sufficient. Now, I frequently talk about articles like this, point out the hypocrisy, make fun of bad journalism, but what is this ultimately all about? Yes, this is a badly written article. Yes, it has a narcissistic preoccupation with women as victims. Yes, the media is biased in favour of women, and so are parts of our legal system. But let's be straight. These are not the underlying causes. It's culture. And this article is just a reflection of a culture that always prioritises female safety and security. Call it gynocentrism if you like. How else do you get hundreds of millions of dollars spent on violence against women campaigns when men are more likely to be victims of violence? This is a deeply ingrained cultural attitude that has biological and psychological underpinnings. And unless a major shift takes place in the minds of men and women, but especially men, it will continue on. Hey, don't worry about me. I've been red-pilled. Have ya? Or does your red pill exterior dissipate the moment you step out the door? As a male, what are you doing on a daily basis to let others know?
I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value.
You are a member of the most intelligent, innovative, creative tribe ever to exist. Men. And in the age of equality, it's time we held women accountable for their actions.